Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to January Supper Club. As we begin the 2015 year, it's a great opportunity for us to take a step back and push pause, kind of look at the bigger picture of what's ahead.
We found an article recently that kind of does this. David Brooks, a writer, came up with he's referring to some studies that are pretty well known, and then he came up with some reasons that he thinks that lie behind this. But the basic studies show that our happiness level, and you know, there's lots of ways we define that, and you get kind of caught up in all that, what it means to be happy. But when they measure general happiness, we're pretty happy in our 20s, and this is as a curve in general. Obviously, not everyone follows this curve. But then happiness tends to decline in your 30s and your 40s, bottoming out at about 50, and then it begins to. How are you, Dee? See, not everyone follows that curve, and then it begins to rise. And the happiest as a general rule that we are is 82 to 85.
Yeah,
isn't that amazing?
It is.
And so he points to this and says, you know, I think this is more than just a natural occurrence, a condition that's going to happen. This is about life skills that we've learned. And then he looks at a few things, and they're pretty interesting, what he's thinking about.
Well, I think one of the things he raised was what he calls bifocalism. It's seeing things from a different perspective. And just like with our vision, as it starts to become presbyopic in many ways, where we...
Nice word.
Yeah. I'm sure it's attached to Presbyterianism in some ways. But it's when we start losing our vision or it changes, we develop a necessity for glasses. And we get used to that. We get used to seeing things from a different perspective than maybe as we always have.
Yeah. So there's one, and we start to get better at that. Another one is that there's a general kind of lightness. We realize with experience and with age that, you know, not every situation is the end of the world. We're going to be able to move on. We're going to get through it. And there's just generally less anxiety, you know, at least the potential for it as we get older.
Yes. Another is just a pattern awareness. We start to see things and know as they occur of seeing the pattern and how that will unfold. And it almost loses its sense of us trying to control it, as we do have a sense of really seeing that insight or that intuitive knowing of how it's going to happen.
We call it experience or something like that. Yeah, that's true. And then just spiritually speaking, it was interesting as we read this article, we thought, well, we talk a lot about these things from the church, and one of those around what he calls bifocalism.
We talk about dualism, and a lot of times, particularly in our early stages of faith development, there's the right and wrong, it's this way or that way, the good and evil. But truly stepping back and seeing from a different perspective, almost like God sees, seeing the whole person or the whole issue versus just seeing one aspect of it.
That second one, the ability to see that it's not the end of the world, it's bringing a certain lightness. We were reminded of the gospel message of Jesus saying, reminding us of the lilies in the field and not to worry. There's a sense that we learn that God is trustworthy. And we talk a lot about, you know, being in the world with faith. We gain that with experience. We learn that, yeah, there's so much grace in the world, and we can learn to be less anxious.
Yes. And then the last is just really looking at and watching and becoming better equipped. Almost our skills develop more of listening and watching, and kind of getting out of the way, and the courage to be able to face into what is reality. I think a lot of times as we age, we start facing more clearly and more courageously into what is.
Yeah, when we talk about growing or maturing spiritually, we talk about being more aligned with reality. We're not fighting it as much. We've got the courage to look at the dark side or the tough side, those kinds of things. There's just a rhythm to it that we're getting better at.
Yeah. So our questions for y'all tonight to discuss are, first of all, how do you feel about aging? As you engage into, because we start aging the day we're born, but as we engage in that aging process, what are the things that you're learning about yourself? Maybe does this U curve kind of represent what you're experiencing in your own journey?
And then those three things. So the first one, talk about bifocalism and non-dualism. Is this your experience that as you're getting older, are you getting better able to see things from different perspectives? Does the idea of seeing as God sees Does that make sense to you? Can you kind of hold without quite so much judgment of things needing to be good or bad?
Another question with the second point is lightness. Do you find yourself becoming more and more open to looking at, with less anxiety of things happen, and almost finding the gems in what happens? That there's a gift in that, even if it may not be exactly what we want. Maybe being less anxious about when things don't quite go the way we had planned for.
And finally, around the pattern awareness, is that true too for you? As you're getting older, are you finding that you're more aligned with reality, more in the rhythm, more often, or not? And it's an interesting ideas that he brought up, and we thought a great way to start the new year, to have some discussion around wherever you are, whether you're in your 30s or 50s or 80s. What are you finding, and what are others in your group finding to be true? So, all right, have a great time.